In this video, I'll teach you my simple method for adding hinges onto wooden dovetailed chests or boxes. Hi, I'm Joshua Farnsworth and welcome to my traditional woodworking school here in Earlysville, Virginia. In my last video, I showed how to use toilet bowl cleaner to turn inexpensive zinc-coated hinges and screws from a hardware store into lovely historical hardware that you can put on your furniture. I recently made these 4 dovetail chests for my kids for a Christmas present. And I wanted these chests to have a very timeless and traditional look, which in my opinion includes installing antique-looking hardware onto the chests. So in this video, I'm going to show you my easy method for installing the hinges onto the boxes like this. Now that I've got the hardware looking good, I'll use a pencil to mark the distance in from the edge of the chest where I want the hinge to go. In this case, it's about 3 inches from the edge, but do what looks good in your piece of furniture. Next, I take the 2 hinges, oriented like this, and lay them in place on the line that I just drew. You can see it a little better here. Then I take a sharp marking knife and make 2 tick marks. First on the pencil mark, and then on the other side of the hinge. For greater accuracy, I use the flat face of the knife against the hinge. In the case of this chest, I want to leave a little bit of wood behind it. So I pull it toward me and leave about 1/8 of an inch behind. I make a little tick mark with my pencil, and then I set my marking gauge to that distance. Then I strike the line with the marking gauge. Keep the setting because it will be the same for all the other hinges that you're installing. Then I extend the first tick marks with the marking knife using the combination square as a guide. Again, I position the flat face of the knife against the square. And then I set another marking gauge for the thickness of the hinge, but I make sure that I set my gauge to extend just over the edge of the hinge. Having that extra depth will help the lid close with a smaller gap. And then I strike the line. Now you can see the mortise that I'll remove for the hinge to sit in. I like to clamp a scrap board to the top of the chest to help prevent me from blowing out the fragile backside of the mortise. I use some quick clamps on each end of the chest and just cover up the rear line to give myself a little more protection. Then I take a sharp chisel and deepen the 2 cross grain marks. Next, I take a chisel and remove some of the wood from the mortises. I try not to go down to the baseline yet. And you can see how the scrap wood helps to stop my chisel from going too far. I'm also using my hands to control the cut. My right hand is pushing and my left hand is putting the brakes on. Occasionally I'll take a very light cut on the top. Be very careful with this or else you'll split the back right off. I'm just lightly severing the fibers. And then on the next cuts, I can go down closer to the line. I do a bit of cleanup work to clear out the remaining wild fibers. Now I use a router plane to go down to the final depth and flatten the bottom of the mortise. If you don't have a router plane, you can just eyeball the flatness of the mortise and you can get it pretty close. But a router plane really makes this more reliable and faster. Be very gentle with the router plane because you can easily break out that small piece of wood. And I continue to sever the stray wood fibers with a chisel. Now you can see how nicely the hinge fits into the mortise. It is just a hair lower than the top of the wood, just how I want it. Now that the hinge mortises are cut, I move on to installing them. I lay them in place and use a sharp pencil to outline the screw holes. Next, I use an awl to mark the center of each hole. Push hard because this will help you center your drill bit. I'm using an egg beater drill and a drill bit that is a bit narrower than the screw shaft. You can also use a power drill. Just bore the hole until you get to the depth of the screw. Before I insert a screw, I dip it in some wax, like this beeswax furniture wax that I made in a previous video. This will help the screw go in way easier. And then I drive each screw down most of the way. I don't drive the screw all the way down yet because I like to make sure both screws are centered in their holes. You can see how the hinge can shift, so I go back and forth tightening them a bit at a time. And I try to clock the screws by aligning the slots. Yeah, it's not that big of a deal, it's just aesthetics. Now I set the lid back on the chest and align the pencil marks with the hinges. I then use a marking knife to transfer the size of the hinge to the lid with a small tick mark. I put the knife right up against the hinge. I move the lid to my workbench vise to lay out the hinge mortises. This step is pretty fast and easy because I still have my settings on my marking gauges. Here I'm first marking the depth and then the width. Then I use a combination square and marking knife to connect the lines. It's as easy as that. And the marking lines are hard to see, so I use a sharp pencil to darken them. Cutting out the mortise on the lid is just about the same process as on the box, so I'll speed it up a little bit. Now this is where the tape on the drill bit is really important because I really want to make sure I stop well before I go through the top of the lid. For the lid, I like to start the screws before I install the hinge because it's harder to start a screw hole when I'm trying to balance the lid next to the box. I don't need to go all the way down, just enough to make it easy when the hinges are on. Now I stack some wood to make it easier to balance my lid upside down while I attach the hinges. And I just add the wax screws in just like before, except I don't tighten down any of the lid screws until they're all in place. Then just like before, I go back and forth and rotate, tightening each screw a bit at a time until they're all tight. And again, I like to clock the screws to make them look a little nicer. So here you can see how amazingly historical these inexpensive hinges and screws look. And even more importantly, they work great and will last for many years. In the next video, I'll show how to add traditional looking hasps onto these chests so that I can add some padlocks to keep people out of these chests. So make sure you subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell down below so that you don't miss that video. If you have any questions or you want to share some of your own tips, please do so below in the comments section. And if you found this video to be helpful, Just make sure you click the like button while you're down there. It'll only take you a second and it'll really help me out. So I'll see you next time here in my shop. Hi, I'm Joshua Farnsworth. If you like this video, I've got a whole bunch of other free woodworking videos and articles at my website, which you can visit by clicking right here. You'll go to woodandshop.com. Down here, if you click, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. And over here are some really great other videos that I think you might like to check out.